Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing. Slow started, show number 289. I made the grievous technical error of not changing 11:30 p.m. for the scheduling time to 11:30 a.m. Duh. So I had to go scramble back for that. Hello, Adele. Hello, Dean. Hello, Tim. Tim,
Hello.
Tim, you're
Hi,
looking
Lauren.
kind of beatnikish. I'm just showing my age a little bit, but I feel like I should be going like this.
Well, that's what I'm doing. That's actually why I'm doing this. I have my bongos over here, and
I want to hear you start busting up into some poetry. I just like way too cool, way too fast.
there once was a man from Nantucket.
No, wrong poetry.
That's all I got, man. You know, it ain't high art around here. I'm looking at the lovely artwork behind Adele.
Yeah,
right.
And all that, and I got none of that. I'm just a simple kid from Newark, New Jersey.
Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, Tim, if you have there's a friend of mine that's selling some very cool guitars. I know you kind of collect them, but he's got some pretty crazy rare gemmy ones. I don't know if you're in the market for that or not.
Feel free to shoot me a link. My lovely bride and I, who are celebrating our 27th wedding anniversary next week, so I won't be on the show next week because we're gonna actually take a little holiday. We booked an Airbnb down at the Jersey Shore,
Nice.
and we're going to just look at a different set of four walls for a couple of days instead of this set of four walls. But
Hopefully we'll have some better weather next week.
Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah, because it's sleeting right at the moment. But we have a firm 1 in, 1 out rule now when it comes to guitars. If one comes in the house, one better go out the house, and that's how you get to stay married for 27 years.
Oh, wow. Well, please congratulate her. Well, I don't know. Should be condolences.
Congratulations to me, sympathy to her. I think
that's it. That's what I was thinking. Yes. Condolences to her, and wow, dude, rocking.
Exactly. Every day I wake up, I roll over. She's still there. I figure I fooled her for another day.
Yeah. Well, I've stopped talking about weather being in Southwest Florida. Well, just about anybody that I call client-wise or not, because I found out that they quickly hang up on me and say something rude and uncomplimentary. But
yeah, about I'm in Nebraska. Just stop.
Yeah, I do. Honestly, though, for all of those that were caught off guard by the weather.
Oh yeah!
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to be prepared for it. It's another thing to. Again, it goes back to you don't appreciate what you have until you are it's taken away from you, or you don't have it. Running water, electricity, heat, scary stuff. I mean, I almost was thinking I was going to see in the news something about bonfires so people can warm up. I mean, throwing wood from the house into it or something. I don't know.
No, there were people burning furniture.
Oh yeah, there absolutely were. Yeah.
It's
amazing.
I
lived through when Hurricane Sandy hit. We happened to be in a part of the state that was hit very hard from power loss perspective. We were without power for 16 days, and I am deeply sympathetic and have nothing but best wishes for folks who are going through that right now. It's not a great thing at all.
And in Houston, they had already gone through so much with the hurricane situation and COVID and everything else. It's just they've been really, really battered. Yeah. And I lived in Houston for 7 years. I lived in Texas for 10 years. And I can tell you, I learned to drive in Texas, and they don't know anything about how to drive in snow.
Oh gosh, no.
No, they can't even drive in rain, let alone snow.
Yeah.
The minute I paid for my my first payment on my first new car, getting out of college and moving to Dallas and hitting snow for the first time, and I was just for 6 weeks at the Four Seasons Hotel, and they said, "Oh, you can sleep over." And I said, "No, I can go home because I'm only half a mile away." And then me and I think 7 or 8 other under 25-year-old young women slowly crashed one in the other. So I'm so sympathetic. And I've also been caught up to my, I'll say waist, up to my waist in water in floods in Houston, just from regular rain.
Oh yeah.
So I know they have real challenges in times like this, and having 5 million people without power and many of them without water. It's beyond what our minds can even imagine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I lived in Houston for a few years, and when we moved into the apartments there, first off, when we're young and poor, it started raining really heavy, and we just saw that everybody started parking their cars in one section of the parking lot, and we're like, well, that's pretty weird, until we realized why. It's like the water started coming up, and like, oh geez, this place floods over here. Didn't even think of it. But no, when you talk about snow driving and so forth, my first experience of being an adult in snow was when I traveled to Montreal for work, and a friend of mine, a coworker, picked me up, and he had this little battered, what he called his wintermobile. Because it's going to get eaten by salt, so he had this beat up little dinky. It was like a Honda Civic, the old little ones, the little Beetle size ones. Yep. The floorboard in the passenger side was virtually not there. Visually, it definitely wasn't. But anyway, he was typical Montreal French, cigarette hanging out of the lip. Snow's coming down. We're going through the snow, between the ruts where it's like. He's talking as if nothing's going on. Then I start to understand what he's talking. He says, yeah, I guess by now I should put the snow tires on. These are my, almost bald bear tires. I should put that. I'm like, what? We're flying along. We go down to this off ramp. There's a stop line at the end. He starts pumping the brake. We start spinning around. That's a great tone in his conversation. He's like, yeah. And the weather's been really, and I'm like, holding on. And he's treating it, sure enough, slide, stop right at the light. Perfect position.
Facing forward.
Unbelievable.
But anyways, so there's a couple of things. One is, I think, probably one of the more interesting, twisty, who knows what this is going to be thing, Clubhouse. It is a weird bag. And, is it going to be another Google Wave, or is it going to be a, wow, this TikTok thing turned out, kind of thing. Tim, I know you had expressed that you had some pretty specific opinions about it, and I've just only been beginning to play with it and doing a couple of rooms to see what it generated and so forth. But I'd love to see what everybody else thought about it. And of course, if anybody wants to talk about familiarities with it, please do, because I'm just getting familiar.
I was seriously thinking that I need to switch from Android to an iPhone, back to an iPhone, I should say, just for that. But someone wisely said to me, aren't you busy enough with all the social media you do already? Like, you really need to add one more thing. Eventually, they're going to have it on Android. But I haven't experienced it.
Yeah. Tim, have you tried it yet at all?
I have tried it just a little bit. There's a couple of ways to answer this question. And I have no specific opinion about Clubhouse. I've used it a little bit. I don't have a ton of experience with it, so I want to start there. I think it is inevitable. I think it's funny that it has taken this long. If you think about content on the internet, right, of any kind, it's always followed the same basic pattern where content has gotten democratized, the ability to create content and produce content and put it in front of people has gotten democratized, and then curation and aggregation and things like search emerge to help people find all this great democratized content that exists, right? So you had it with websites and blogs and things like that. And of course we had directories first and then later search, directories like Yahoo and Alta Vista and things like that. And then later search like, I said Alta Vista, I beg your pardon. I was thinking directories like Yahoo and Excite, and then we had search like Alta Vista and Google, right, that came along and made it easy for people to find stuff. And then the same happened with video, where we had videos all over the place, and then basically YouTube emerged as the place, right? Facebook did the same with people, LinkedIn did the same with professionals, and the like. So this democratization of audio and curation of audio is, something that was bound to happen. Will Clubhouse be the one who becomes the Google of audio? I don't know. I mean, I have no specific prediction about it because I don't know that there's any way to know. It could be them. It could be Spotify. It could be
Twitter.
It could be Twitter with I can't remember what they call that now. Spaces, Twitter Spaces, right? So, we're seeing the same thing with newsletters right now in Substack, right? So I think there is a place for this. I think that there will be we will see a dominant player emerge, but time will tell whether it'll be Clubhouse or someone else. The one thing I would say, and I want to go back to Adele's comment because I think it's exactly right, is I'm going to be a little negative for a second. I don't mean to be negative, but I remember when Snapchat first came out, or when Instagram first came out, clients coming to me and saying, we need an Instagram strategy, or we need a Snapchat strategy. And my take on that is, no, you don't. You need a strategy, and you need to figure out where your customers are. And if Snapchat is that place, then we should use that. And if Instagram is that place, we should use that. And if LinkedIn is that place, we should use it. And if it is, great. And I think Clubhouse right now, for hotels, for travel marketers, et cetera, there's probably a place there. I think it's going to be more beneficial, honestly, for those of us who sell to people than it is for hotels and the like. I could be wrong. I could absolutely be wrong, but I think it's more a space for the vendor community.
Yes.
And will be super beneficial for the vendor community.
Yes.
Than it may
I've already benefited. I've already benefited from Clubhouse, and I'm not even on it because my friend Dean here went to a Clubhouse thing yesterday and told me about it. Mm-hmm. And I have an appointment with that person.
And that's perfect. Yeah, I think that is the more likely end state, I think. But I mean, it's such early days. We're going to have to wait and see.
And I think to expand a little bit on what you're saying, Tim, is that hotelers might benefit from being given a more even playing field of exposure to vendors, where it's not so much selling what they are doing, but rather looking for whom can help them with stuff. Because in all honesty, every time I've gone into Clubhouse, it's like when you go to a conference and there's all sellers and nobody to buy. It feels like that. Like, okay, the people that I've come across are the people talking about all the things that they can do, and then the people that are listening to them are wanting to be like them. Not because somebody's buying something, but rather maybe they are for those that are trying to, sell what they can, make $1 million in 2 days thing. But and I'm being derogatory. I shouldn't say that. There is some really good content. I've come across some really good dialogue, but I've also come across a lot of pitches. A lot of what I'm doing right, what you should be doing, and how you should buy what I'm selling, conversations. And, to be fair, this show started years ago, 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago, based on Blab, which is a video version of what Clubhouse is audio-wise. It was a place to say, hey, here's a platform, let's go talk. And then it just kind of grew from that point to it. But, Tim, to your point, audio has emerged. I remember, and you remember, to do a podcast was a arduous process. And to get an audience, it was an arduous process to be an audience because you needed specific things to listen to podcasts. Now, it is an extension of just every medium that's out there. Every TV broadcaster has a podcast. Every show has a podcast. Every dialogue has. I wouldn't say mandatory. It's a expected aspect of your communication set to have a podcast. And it goes back to what you said, the democratization of communication, the ability to be on platforms that people can discover and be communicated with. This just is a two-way value version of it compared to a one-way podcast version of it. But Dean, what do you think? You look pensively thoughtful and.
Oh, so I've dabbled with it a little bit this week. I just got into it. Lauren, you and I were on one earlier this week, and as Adele mentioned, actually, I stumbled into there was a conversation because you set your interests, you talk about what you're interested in, and then it sends you notifications saying, "Hey, somebody's talking about this." So, okay, yeah, let me just check this out, see what it is. Well, I happened to be somebody that their very conversation was to talk about culture in hospitality and training employees at the hotels about that and how to be hospitable. To which I'm like, Adele, that's what Adele does. And so I was able to, and I brought it up on that because they put me on as a speaker. And I said, yeah, here's what I do. But the person you really want to talk to is, we were able to have that conversation. So I think it's interesting in that, right now, as everybody's working from home, we're not going to those conferences anymore. And a lot of times you would go to a conference and you had those dinner table conversations with people that we can't do today. right? And so there's these conversations that are taking place, and granted, it's audio only, but there's that curiosity factor, that curiosity of, so what's everybody doing out there? What are people talking about? And can I drop in on some of these conversations and just be a part of it and see what's going on?
Do you think this lack of recording capability is just bandwidth metrics, or a strategic play into the chat series that where it's not recorded? It's, it is what it is when you see it, and it's done when it's done kind of mentality. Do you think it's a planned strategy, or just that we don't have enough servers to record all the audio that people are probably pumping into this thing?
From what I understand, the company has about 8 developers.
Yeah.
8. So I would wager it's a bandwidth thing. But at the same time, too, let's go back to that example, the conversation that you would have at a dinner table at a conference, right? Nobody's recording that, or at least they shouldn't be. So it's a conversation.
Lauren brought a video camera.
Well, yeah. I have an implant now that just records everything.
Sorry, Dean, you were saying. Go ahead.
No, but so I think to keep it as a casual conversation, I don't think recording is beneficial to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with Dean. I assume that it's a strategic choice on their part. There's always a place for ephemeral moments, right? Because you add a certain amount of FOMO, you add a certain amount of you have to be there. Snapchat is still incredibly popular with a specific segment, right? It's a large platform, got a lot of users and things like that, and its core offering still is ephemeral. And that's one of the things people like about it. So I think there will always be a place for, hey, we're going to have a conversation, and this is something that we can just talk, and other people can be around and the like. But there's no record of it.
It's funny. You talk about the generational components, and I completely agree with you, Tim. Calling millennials is just a contrived, too generalized statement. And it kind of goes to something that whether it's a sidebar of I'm just trying to track down what you think about the VR world, and not now that you're playing with a VR set. But gaming, you get exposed to a whole Pandora's box of age categories. And kids, when you're playing with them, are called squeakers because they just... Meanwhile, they totally smoke you in the game, just so you know.
Oh, sure. Well, actually, before we go on to that, just go back to the ephemeral thing for a second. And Adele, I know you lived in New York for a long time, and Dean, this may be true of you as well. I don't know. One of my favorite things in the world is live theater, right? Mm. I love live music performances, and I love live theater. They're not better than movies. They're not worse than movies. They're a different thing. And one of the things that makes theater great is it's happening in that moment. It is, you go and see a great performance, it could only have happened that way on that night, right? Yep. You see a great music performance, the same is true. And I think there is always a place in human interaction for that thing of, this is just of this moment, and it's okay that there's no record of that. So I don't think that's generational per se. I think that's something that we all value in the right context at the right time. So I don't
disagree with you, but it does go to the point that I was trying to make with it, and that is the age categorization as they're growing up, they are naturally aware of their larger audience capabilities.
Oh, sure.
Okay, the point of it is that as these youth are growing up, they're used to having a voice larger than we had when we were growing up. We had a handful of kids in school that we knew each other. There was maybe another layer past that, and the guy that always kicked your butt or whatever. And you had a smaller circle of people that you radiated from as you went into college, then from college into friends and family. Family was your first nascent cell. They start life where their nascent cell is much larger than family. As a matter of fact, it's substantially larger than sometimes their family nascent cell starts as. Okay? So for them, this dialogue, this here-now communication is as common to them as it is uncommon to us. Because as you say with the Broadway shows, I to this day, one of the most cherished moments I had was at the digital conference last year, the randomness of Jenny coming over and saying, I got 2 tickets to Hamilton, and boom, we go off to Hamilton. How did I know? How would anybody have known that was the last time Broadway was going to be open?
Sure.
Let alone that show, And now I look back at it, and even though I've seen it on TV, I see the pictures of Jenny and us smiling with the stage behind us. I'm like, wow, slice and time magic moment. You know, to your point, that's absolutely what that was. You know, and to that end, we're used to this type of communication. Look how substantive the change was between our political figures having a social voice. We got used to. Our past presidency had the longest run of press release, presidential briefings in the history of any record of presidential briefings. He went for 300 some odd days or something where he didn't do a presidential briefing, but we heard from him incessantly every day due to social media. And then when that was taken away, how weird it shifted, you know, and that's just an example. I'm not trying to be political about it or anything.
No, sure.
The difference between before and after. Well, go ahead.
I would challenge it a little bit though, right? And I'm not disagreeing with you specifically. I think that there's a broader topic here, and there's some really good research. Dana Boyd at Microsoft Research has done some tremendous work on generational differences here, and Jeff Jarvis at CUNY has done some tremendous work on this very topic. And one of the things, I think Jeff Jarvis is the one who came up with this phrasing, and it's something we should always remember. And I apologize, it's taking me a second to come up with it. He talks about the difference between the public and a public. And what that means is, you know, and this is where Facebook used to go wrong in the early days, and I'll explain this in a second. You know, the public is everybody, right? But a public are the people we share things with that are public information. You're exactly right, Lauren. When we were kids, when we were in school, our public was a very limited set of people, right? There were not a lot of people we could be in front of. But we also had different publics. There was the public of our school friends. There was the public of our home friends. There was the public of our family, right? The example that I use all the time to explain this is you all have a LinkedIn account, right? Mm-hmm. You all have a Twitter account, right? Mm-hmm. You all have a Facebook account, right? Mm-hmm. You probably have an Instagram. Mm-hmm. Okay. You have an email contact list in your phone. Right? You have a phone book in your phone, right? How many of you are connected to exactly with 100% overlap, exactly the same people in all of those places?
I would say in the 20 percentile for me, because you know how I am with dumping. Yep. I literally will dump my contacts into every platform I go into to see who's actually in that platform and then find out that commonality.
Yep.
Something like Clubhouse is an example of what we started this conversation with. Yep. There's a handful because there's just not as many people involved.
But you don't have overlap in every single platform where there's
not
no
100% across the board everybody. Right. But there are. For me, it's a higher percentage of people that are.
But you are probably an outlier, like on the bell curve.
I'm not the
way out here on the right edge, right? Adele, you don't, right?
No.
You don't, right?
Yeah, I really try to separate my LinkedIn versus my Facebook audiences, for example. There's occasional overlap, but I really try to keep them separate.
Right. And there's a lot of research that shows that most people across all generations continue to live their lives that way. They separate a public from the public, and where platforms tend to go wrong. And this is where Facebook used to get themselves in trouble all the time. You know, think about all the missteps that Facebook made in the early days because they assumed that something I shared or Adele shared or Dean shared, we wanted shared with everybody. We wanted shared with the public, when in fact we wanted it shared with a public. And the big distinction among younger generations and people who've grown up with social networking and the like, and really we're talking about Gen Z at this point, because even millennials, you know, first of all, millennials, I hate the term. I refer to them, I used to call them adults under 40. We now need to call them adults approaching 40, right? You know, most of them didn't grow up with social media. That Facebook has only been around for 13 years or something like that. You know, they might have been in college the first time they were exposed to something like that. Obviously MySpace preceded it. Obviously there were other things, but you know, younger generations are learning to navigate the which public am I talking to with greater facility than I think people who've been around a little longer have, because we never had to navigate a public. We knew which public we were interacting with at that immediate moment. So there was no risk of bleed over, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And so younger audiences are people who are actually pretty savvy about this. And again, this is not my core area of expertise. It's something I've read a fair bit about. It's something I pay a lot of attention to because they are the consumers of the future. They are our next set of guests. That's why I care about this.
And I don't
Dana Boyd is really the person who I would encourage you to look at some of her research. She's got some really, really great work.
I mean, I agree with this. When I say that this crossover I have is because I also segment how, for all that I do on social platforms, I don't share a lot of stuff on social platforms. And if I do, I've created groups a long time ago. Sure. I'm sharing this with family. I'm sharing this with this level of friends. My high school people don't know what my college people know because I share differently with them. So either an early adopter or realizing that I was being a hoe on Facebook and following everybody and I need to segment it out. I don't know. But the idea of which, and also too, by platform, Instagram, I hardly touch it personally. And if I do, I usually push out more business than anything, which is reverse of what it's really intended for. But I'm saying about in the youthfulness of it, because, and this is something that's going to be something we're going to find about in the future tense, with ripping kids out of their social norms of school and interaction and relying upon their online interconnectivity of self-fulfillment of popularity and what have you. How's the long-term impact on it going to be? Because why I bring this up is there's I'm sure kids, when they're playing a game, have a certain a group of friends with that game. If they really get good with some of their friends, they want them to go over on their other friends because they're constantly talking about how good they are in another game or something. They're creating crossovers.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're creating themselves with people. So they've changed what we used to do physically together. Like, hey, this is my friend Tim. We go to school together. To this is Tim the gamer from XYZ game, and he became my friend. Now he's my friend on the other ABC game, and you're creating these social networks. And from a marketing point of view, I kind of think with Clubhouse, I kind of feel like the reason why it's latching on is there's a lot of discontent of current social platforms. I think TikTok's success was the uniqueness of what it offered for an expressionism of what it does. Facebook didn't. I think people look at Facebook now as they do with large corporate entities as a negative. As like, I don't want to feed the beast kind of thing. That, some people do it just simply because of the people that they know are on it. So they use that as a means of communication, but they themselves don't like it. And they're looking for other mediums. And I think that's why.
I think that's absolutely true. I think that goes without saying.
Mm-hmm. I definitely feel that with Twitter, when I was with the hotels, I liked Twitter as a way of reaching travel journalists, and travel agents are going to be where travel journalists are. Mm-hmm. And it's a news thing. So of course, travel journalists are going to be there. So it's a great place to present what new information you have about your hotel, or just to interact and form relationships with people who are influential in travel journalists, travel advisors. But personally, there's so much pain and argumentative behavior on Twitter. I don't miss it too much. I probably should find a way to target a particular conversation with a particular public that is just not about that. Actually, a lot of times on LinkedIn, which is, just business, somebody will say something and then there'll be 4,000 people commenting on that thing. Please don't talk about politics here. Please don't talk about politics here. Please don't talk about politics here. But they're just actually promoting that thing even more by making all those comments.
Mm-hmm. And Laura, I do want to say, I actually agree with your core point. Your core point is right. Is you said something incredibly powerful a second ago that I think is worth noting, where you talked about people developing these social networks. The social network is not the app, right? The social network is the people, right? And there's a lot of evidence that shows this across all kinds of platforms that various consumers groups, various consumer segments, various demographic segments are looking for better ways to connect with the social network that they want to speak with. Now, I was calling it a public before, but it's the same idea, right? It's this concept of who are the people with whom I want to interact? Who is the social network with which I want to interact? And which platforms allow me to interact with the people I want at the time that I want? So I wouldn't dispute that even a little tiny bit. In fact, it would be idiotic to try to dispute that. The fastest growing social network pre-COVID, fastest growing, right? And this is wild. And unfortunately, I haven't seen any stats on this in a long time. But the fastest growing, most popular social network amongst teenagers pre-pandemic was AirDrop.
What?
Right. You know what AirDrop is?
No.
Isn't that a file sharing on your iPhone?
It's the file sharing on your iPhone.
Yeah.
I don't have an iPhone.
So what would happen is you'd go to a concert, you'd go to an event, you would go to a place where there was a large group of people. You can see why this got shut down completely when COVID hit. And kids would be sharing memes with one another anonymously, right? It was purely anonymous, purely, get the little buzz of, I thought of something funny related to what is happening in this moment, and I'm going to share it with people who are right around me, and literally right around me, and they're not going to know who I am. And it was incredibly popular and incredibly, when I say fastest growing, obviously usage numbers were low in relative terms, especially if we're talking Facebook, right?
Right.
But in terms of how quickly it caught on among certain demographics and the like, and it speaks precisely to what you're talking about. How do I connect to the people I want to connect to in a way that I am comfortable with and in a way that lets me do what I want? Clubhouse is certainly one outgrowth of that, for sure. I mean, there's no two ways about it. I wouldn't dispute that in the least. Is it the one that's going to kill Facebook? No, it's going to serve a different need than Facebook does for some group or some audience. Mm-hmm. How big, how many, how long? Yeah, it's way too soon to say that. And God knows, just as Twitter has come out with their version, we know Instagram is 10 minutes behind with their version, right? Yeah. So
well, and two, as I dabbled with it this week, the first question I had to ask myself, we talk about our publics, right, our audience. I had to ask myself, so am I approaching this? Is this going to be a professional network for me, or is this going to be a personal network for me? And in what direction? I opted for the professional route on that, which then gets interesting because if this kind of goes that direction and that's the audience that it tends to attract, then it becomes something that I think that becomes interesting with a site like LinkedIn. Can those two pair up together?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, from a perspective of early adoption, I looked at it as having had success in times where something popped up for a while, Google Wave or whatever, and being an early adopter got you large audiences on that platform. It gave you great exposure on that platform and created connectivities that, should even the platform fail and fade, get crossed over, because as everyone sees the ship sinking, they're looking for another ship. And if you've created that kind of audience relationships and or communications, everyone kind of decides where they're jumping to next, or to keep in communication. Oh, you're the dude from the side. And so there is crossover to that. And that's how I've kind of been approaching Clubhouse. Is like, look, if it thrives, great. I pat myself on the back. I jumped on early and was able to go over and build an audience. If it dies, I still feel happy. Like I made connections or you tried something that crossed over and pushed over to something else. To talk to my hotels about whether they should be active in it, absolutely not. There's no value proposition, say, versus if you're looking for people offering services, there's such a clamoring of people trying to get voice and volume to what they're doing, us included, that we go out there to basically share our wares as to what we're doing in the hopes that there's somebody that we go, hey, that's something I need, and go from there.
By the way, I wouldn't just, sorry, Dean, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, and be aware too, we talk about would I tell my hotels to do it? Absolutely not, for another reason altogether, and that is that it really has the potential to be a huge time suck.
Exactly what I was going to say. You know what? I would always say previously, Lee Crockrell says customer service is not a department. Everybody is in customer service. I say that about social media. Social media is not the youngest intern to the last one to walk in the door. Social media, you should be a social media driven organization because you're always trying to get that user generated content and you're always communicating with your audience in wherever they are. But now, I mean, who has time for all this? I mean, unless there's something that's saving us time on the other side, that's making us suddenly more available. I mean, there's only so much time that you can give it. You have to really pick your priorities or hire it out. And I don't know whether communication should really originate from someone outside.
Well, and I want to add to what Adele said, because I think there's two differences here, right? And I agree with Adele 100%. My pithy line that I use all the time is social is people. And if you're not concerned with doing people, you shouldn't be in marketing and you shouldn't be in hospitality, right? So social is core to what we do. Does that mean you should do every social platform? No, not at all. Because it might not be where your customers are, and it might not be a good use of your time. The one difference here, and Lauren, I'm going to call out you specifically in a really positive way, right? Warren Buffett has this thing where you should make a list of your top 25 things that matter to you in life, right? You've probably all heard this somewhere before, right? But you should list the 25 things that are most important in your life, that are important to you to accomplish, right? And then you should take that list and you should say, what are the top 5 of that 25, right? And decide, and that's your list, the A list and the B list, right? The 5 and the 20. And the 5 are where you should devote 100% of your energies. And the 20 are the things that you should avoid at all costs, because all they will do is distract you from accomplishing the 5 most important things you want to accomplish.
Wow.
Right? And you, Lauren, your brand, your personality, your persona, your benefit that you provide is being the early adopter. You learn this stuff so your clients don't have to. You learn this stuff so people in the industry don't have to, because they know who to go to if they need to know whether or not this is something they need to do.
Thank you.
So everything that you said about being an early adopter is true. Everything that you said about being building an audience that then you can carry over to other places. Those are all true and all valid and all accurate and are true for everybody who's an early adopter, because I do think there's merit in growing that audience. There's merit in the term that I'm using these days, and I stole it from somebody and I would credit them if I can remember who said it, is, reach guests early, right? We focus way too much on the bottom of the funnel, and we need to reach guests early more effectively so that they will come back to us when they're ready to book. It's something I've said for a long time. I just never used the phrase reach guests early before I ripped it off from somebody who I would happily credit if I remember who I was supposed to credit. So I think there's a lot of merit in reaching guests early. And there's immense merit for you to be an early adopter, because that is one of your top 5 things. And it is the value that you bring to your customers. It's the value you bring to your clients. It's the value you bring to our audience. It's the value you bring to the industry generally. I fully believe that. Do I think that everybody who's watching this show, or everybody who might watch this show, or everybody who's listening to us or we might talk to should run out and start using Clubhouse tomorrow or be lining up for an invite? Nah, let Lauren figure it out first. And then he'll tell you whether or not it's of any value, right? So I think that's the distinction I would make.
No, thank you. I appreciate the compliment for it. But and it's also, just to be honest with you, if you talk about top 5 things, love what you do and have fun with it. That is fun for me. It's like, what is this thing? Let's tear it apart. Let's put it back. So
and you build a career off of it. I mean, no, seriously. Yeah. I like to think I do something similar, but not as much. Right? I'm an early-ish adopter. I'm not the early adopter you are, and I don't think I could be. I think Dean is an early adopter. I think Adele is an early adopter. I think we've all built our careers to some degree about being early adopters relative to the average. You are the alpha tester, right? I mean that sincerely. I mean, I think the rest of us are somewhere, beta or gamma testers, right? No, that's not meant as a knock. I mean, when
I take it
come to it where we come to it, you come to it out here, right?
Thank you. I want to bounce a question off everyone before we jump into another topic for it. So I'm putting together, again, strange benchmarks. Coming up will be Navis's Navigate program. That was my last personally attended somewhere else conference before all this really turned serious for everyone in March. But of course, they're doing it virtually this year as well. Most people should out of abundance of caution. But I've been asked to participate in this section again. And I'll say good and bad. The first was that they brought together a complete deck of what they wanted me to talk about. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't really work for me. So out of that process, they asked me to solidify my change in process for marketing this past year. And from that came out a statement that I've asked them to use as the context of the presentation that I want to bounce off of you for the legitimacy, whether it makes sense or doesn't. So please understand this is a legit question. I said that marketing for me, for hospitality, has changed from the beacon mentality of here I am, this is what I have, this is what I want, to more of a lantern. So lighthouse to lantern is the statement, the impact of COVID marketing, where now we guide the guest to what they want to discover, what they need to know about us, what they have to understand to make the decisions of what they need to do for travel. So we've gone from here I am, what I am, this is what I offer, buy me, beacon, to let me help you through the process of where you want to go, if I can help, or if I'm that solution for you, by identifying who I can give that content to. So that's how I've defined the change in marketing for hospitality. I'm sure it possibly reflects on other industries, but a specific hospitality is my ethos to this. Does that have legs in your mind, or am I just like, well, that's cute, but what do you think?
It sounds like it has a lot to do with personalization and
it does.
Yeah, and identifying different messages for different people,
and
it
has that reflection.
More of a conversation than
No, that's great, because that's really a very strong aspect of this. Is not just saying what I am, but listening to what you need, and then seeing if I can give you value on that. Maybe I'm not the answer. Maybe
I think that is the direction.
I would be curious, if we say that's the direction, does that give a little bit more rise, a little bit more weight to the brick and mortar travel agents out there that have really diminished over the years because of the online travel agencies where I can go in and click and do my own thing? And do we have travelers now that are a little bit more, hey, I really want somebody to do what you just described, to walk me through this, what hotel do I want to be at, next to what restaurant, next to what attraction, and so on. I don't know. I'm just putting the question out there.
I feel like travel advisors way back, I always thought of as people who traveled, people who had experiences, and people who could recommend things from their experiences. And somewhere along the way, we started hiring people who pushed a lot of buttons, and they gained some expertise from doing that, and they dealt with problems and everything like that, but they weren't necessarily somebody who, and maybe they went on a few press fam trips, but I think the level of travel advisors, like my girlfriend Maggie Marenga, who spends so much time in Africa. She's from Africa, and she planned my honeymoon in Africa. And there's not a chance in the world I could go online on any website and create an experience like I had. That is something special. And there are a lot of phenomenal travel advisors. They like to be called travel advisors, and I can appreciate that are truly experts in their field. And you cannot create for yourself something like that. Now, if I just wanted to go to Boston and I just needed to pick up a hotel in Boston to spend 2 nights, I may not feel like I need a travel advisor. But if I want to have an experience in a place I've never been, I think that those travel advisors have more value than ever, because we have precious little time, especially here in America. And that vacation time is so precious to us. It's time with our family. It's why we worked so hard in the first place, is to be able to have this time with our family and do something nice for them. So I think those people are important. But the finger pushers, the button pushers, we have our own fingers and our own buttons. We don't need them.
Yeah,
I'm reading your articles as fast as I can.
I just shared a bunch of links. This is actually, first of all, Lauren, I love your framing. I wish I'd come up with
cool.
it. I wish I'd come up with it. It's exactly. I don't think it's. First of all, I agree with everything Dean said. I agree with everything Adele said, completely and utterly. Adele is exactly right. If you look at the travel advisors who are in business today, they're the ones who continued to fill that role. And the folks who are the button pushers are the ones who went out of business over the last, 15, 20 years, with no disrespect to them, but they weren't providing a lot of value.
Right.
Bill Fisher's cooking along just fine. When's the last time you went to Bill Fisher's website? Oh, right. He doesn't have one because he doesn't need one, because his guests, the company's guests, Bill's still with us or not? I should know that. I feel bad. But the company, has always been there to solve the problems that their members had, that their customers had, in a way that's most appropriate. And, there is this long-standing trend in marketing and advertising for a long time. And I'm not saying anything people haven't said a million times before, right? But in marketing and advertising for a long time, we liked to think we controlled the conversation. And that's not true. We had a media budget. We had the ability to buy space on television or buy space on radio and interrupt people when they were trying to do something else, right? And one of the things that digital has created over the last 20 plus years is it hasn't given customers control, because they've always had control. What it has done is it has made the things that allowed us to try to intercept control go away, right? And so the guests can do whatever they want, whenever they want, wherever they want, however they want. That's always been true. Now it's just easier for them to do it, and it's harder for us to interrupt them. And so the correct way to solve for this, and I shared a couple of things I wrote, but I also shared, HubSpot's point of view on inbound marketing. I shared this research from Lori Wisdo at Forrester Research. 74% of business buyers told Forrester that they conduct more than half of their research online before making an offline purchase. This has to do with B2B buyers of large things. They're 2/3 of the way down their buyer's journey before they ever talk to somebody in sales. And these are for things that historically, we're not talking about buying a hotel room. These are things that you can't buy without talking to a salesperson, right? And they're doing all the work up front because they don't want to be sold to. They want to find answers. And the people who will succeed for the next 20 years are people who answer customers' questions most effectively.
I'm actually so surprised how often I come to a situation where I can't see a demo, or at least more in-depth information about a hospitality product without making a one-on-one appointment. And that's so disappointing to me because I really want to know what that does so that I can, share it with people and compare things. I remember I was talking about the other day on this show, I was talking about a product that I really liked called Beekeeper. And I think Craig, maybe from Milestone, maybe it was Kim. I can't remember, but I think it might have been, I can't remember. Could have been him, said, oh, but there's another product that is, rated even higher. And I couldn't really find hardly anything about it without speaking to a human being. It just, to me, it doesn't make sense. I think that having a lot of videos
It's funny you mentioned that. Sometimes the better products, it's not because they're just some inferior products have better marketing. They're talked about more than those ones, as you just pointed out. There's some travel agents that don't need the exposure level that other ones need to prioritize their value proposition to. But I think out of the conversation, all this, it goes back to something you said, Adele. When people are planning travel, if I just have to go somewhere, and this isn't for an event or it's for I just got to go somewhere, I can function in the space of, I can fly, I can this, boom, 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 I'm done. For a value proposition of not wanting to miss the biggest ball of twine, and this is a family adventure, or I'm spending this much money or whatever, I equate it a little bit to buying a house. I can look on Zillow and whatever it is, and see all the houses in the world I want. But you bring a realtor in, not just because they're the ones that can get the key, but because you want somebody to say, listen, if you're looking at this house, this neighborhood, you're in Texas, you need to make sure that the foundation is good. I would have never have known that. It isn't listed on me buying a house on Zillow that I should check that it's sitting on clay and that they have a good foundation. So you're wanting that professional. And as you pointed out, I've been there. I've seen this. Here's the clock in Prague, but if you really want to see something cool, right around the corner is this really cool bar called the Hemingway, and it has the most amazing cocktails. You can't miss it. I'm not going to find that on a Expedia. And it's not that Expedia's, as you said, they're trying to target that. They're trying to be that.
Well, no, the problem isn't that you can't find it. The problem is that there's so much to find. It's sometimes hard to winnow through and figure out what are the things you can't miss, right? Like that's what the advisor brings. That's a real benefit of don't waste your time with this. Check out this one. You could find the list of what are the 8,000 best things to do in Prague.
Sure.
Right. Okay. 7,995 of them, though, might not be the ones you want. You want the list of the 5, and here's the ones that are just going to waste your time.
Yeah.
And plus, just as soon as that little thing from Hemingway's or that hole in the wall bar or whatever does get onto that top 10 list, now all of a sudden that's what everybody's trying to do, and it's no longer that hidden gem, and so it loses kind of that luster, right? Whereas if you got somebody that's been there and has the inside secret, now it's something kind of cool.
By the way, I do want to jump in. I want to jump in real quick, just because I want to build off your analogy for the realtor for a second. There's a funny lesson in this. I've done some work for companies in the real estate industry because of what I do, and what's fascinating is if you talk to some of those companies 20 years ago, 15 years ago, they said, "Oh, there will not be realtors," there will not be real estate agents down the road. Some of the most forward-thinking people said there will not be real estate agents. And what has happened? They were half right and they were half wrong. Right? Yeah. Well, obviously, some real estate agents have suffered because they're not good at it. They're not providing help.
Adele's button pushers.
Like Adele's button pushers, right? But what's actually happened is the real estate agent themselves is incredibly valuable to the conversation. What's happening is the brands that those real estate agents have been associated with, in some cases, are in trouble, right? Being supplanted by Zillow, being supplanted by, Trulia, being supplanted by other tools like that, where the agent can be an independent agent and be just as successful as they ever were because the tools are what they need, and where they get them is what's important. But having this flat, Adele, I'm going to make you our hypothetical real estate agent for a second. What is more important to the home buyer? And by the way, this has very real application to our world, right? Is it more important that I'm going with Adele Gutman, a brand X agent, or am I going with Adele Gutman, the most knowledgeable realtor in Charleston, South Carolina? Which one do you care about more?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And what's happened is those brands that were brand X, and I'm not going to call anybody out because a couple of them have paid me money, and I don't want to offend anybody who might do that in the future. But what's important is Adele and Adele's knowledge and Adele's expertise and what Adele brings to the table. And all Adele needs are the tools and the platforms and the things like that that are necessary to help her provide her customers with the experience that they need. Right? That's we're seeing the same thing in the hospitality industry with brands, soft brands, and independents of who is enabling the hotel to best serve the needs of the guest?
Yep.
Who's allowing the hotel to best differentiate themselves and provide guests the amenities that are important to their guests and their travelers, right? And who are the ones who are, we have a playbook, we do it the same for everybody, we and everything's the same always. And it's going to help a lot of hotels, and it's going to hurt some who actually that cookie cutter model doesn't fit in this specific market or with this specific customer segment or things along those lines. I mean, whereas you can go buy the technology to be connected and be on the distribution channels or have your website or have your booking engine or things like that. You can get that stuff anywhere. How are you differentiating yourself? How are you making yourself stand apart?
Well, look at the shows we watch on HGTV. House Hunters. Good God, the popularity that's solely based on exactly what you just said. How do I tailor the interests of my client to what I know is in the market? Like you said, do I want Adele, the XYZ realtor company representative, or do I want Adele that can tell me this is the perfect little house for you because of everything you just told me that you wanted, which goes to what Adele says about guest experience.
Well, and I would argue it's why Airbnb has risen so quickly, because what Airbnb, I apologize, what Airbnb, we have talked in the industry for years that what people are going to want is personalization, and we've made some small strides, and some brands and some companies have done a better job of it than others. But what Airbnb does very well, right? And they have their problems. I'm not suggesting Airbnb is superior to hotels. It's not. And any good hotelier should be able to kick Airbnb's ass any day of the week.
Right.
But what they are able to do is, we're going to give you the property that is perfect for your particular stay this time. We are going to give you the amenities that is perfect. We're personalizing that experience, not the website experience, not, did we stock the fridge with Heineken versus Stella Artois? We're personalizing the actual place you stay, we Airbnb, because we're going to put you in this condo this time, or this tower this time, or this standalone home this time, or this room this time. It's literally personalizing the stay to the needs of the guest in a way that I think the hotel industry as a whole is still struggling to do, because we've built out of a model of how do you get the lowest cost per key to a developer.
I do want to point out that we are privileged to have the one, the only, from Papua New Guinea himself. 10. Dude, good to see you around.
Hi, everybody. And my sincere apologies for not being on as much. These last few weeks have been crazy, to say the very, very least.
Hopefully good crazy, Tristan.
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, we've been having lots of interesting conversations with some very interesting and crazy people as well at the same time. Making some new friends around the globe, new clients and things like that. So it's really nice time, and it's so lovely to see that there is still life left in the old, hospitality industry. There are some hotels out there that are being successful, or at least forward thinking and getting ready to plan. And it's the death knell hasn't tolled for everybody, which thank God, because we need it. Right now, I need it because of we're still in the throes of lockdown over here. Papua New Guinea is crazy. Absolutely right now.
I shared an article that was in the Independent this morning, and I am so thrilled for the hospitality to get literally this shot in the arm. The one vaccine is really incredibly effective, especially over several weeks. I saw in the Independent, it said 75%, but I saw something else on television that said actually even higher, probably just from those statistics coming from a different country or a different survey. But imagine if we stopped giving the second vaccine and just started focusing on getting everybody one. We could really cover the world so much faster. And I have one vaccine already in me. Yay!
Good for you.
Good, well done. I think, to be fair, I also wonder the placebo effect here as well. You know, because we've got a mind shift now. We have a vaccine, and we've all been like, "Oh, great, we've got a vaccine." But it's been months that we've had a vaccine, and it's taken it time to such a logistic effort. I think now that more and more people will, even if they have just the first jab, it's that shift in mentality. Okay, life is starting to begin again. You know, a new normal, albeit, but it's more normal than it is, kind of lockdown and fear and closing of businesses and this, that, and the other. I'm hoping there is that aspect to it, that people get a bit freer and want to actually start living again.
Absolutely. I mean, right now I'm only 1 week in on mine, so I'm not being very bold, and I still wear 2 masks and 2 filters if I do go out. But I feel so much more comfortable inside. Yeah. I don't have any fear about it now.
And the injection that you've had you haven't grown a third head or a strange political affiliation to some other random party.
No.
But Bill Gates is still tracking you, though. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and I've had Bell's palsy twice, and that was like the one thing that people were talking about, being a thing. So I was frightened of getting another case, but absolutely nothing whatsoever.
I'm glad of that, because my wife. Sorry, Laura. I was going to say.
No. Go, please. Go right ahead. Go.
My wife has just had her jab about 3 hours ago, and she had Bell's palsy previously as well. So, but she's young, she's healthy. She's a couple of years older than me, but okay, that's fine. She's not here, is she?
Okay. Mentally, everybody's older than me. I've never gone past 12, so we're all good.
You and me both, buddy. You and me both.
Maturity or intelligence, 12 is my limit. That was it.
I think that all the estimates about how much the travel will recover might possibly be re-examined if we shift our policy about the vaccines and just do one, let's get everybody in one and just take off the restrictions and just give it to everybody that walks in. Just boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, let's just stop. That's it.
One of the things I think we've been encouraging people for months and months and months is be responsive to facts on the ground, right? Obviously, if the vaccine situation changes, I think a lot of the predictions that folks have made have to go out the window, because I think we're seeing a lot of pent up demand, and that could be a really good thing. I will say I'm still bearish on. I don't know if everybody saw the really great column by Jan Freitag from STR about business travel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you shared it on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that was on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm sure you did.
Yeah, it's the one I shared was not from the Jan Freitag one. I shared a different one, but he had a very good one about business travel. That I'm still bearish on business travel a little bit for 2 reasons. One, because of the data. A, people have found out what they can live without, and then B, because of the thing that I shared on LinkedIn, which was about how budgets are kind of locked for this year. I think that those are. I think what Jan said and what I said are complementary, because he adds a good wrinkle to it, which is, obviously, if you're worried about losing a sale because you're not going to put a salesperson in front of folks, you'll free up the travel budget for that.
Yeah.
No problem at all. That said, there's a lot of travel that people did, a lot of transient, or team meeting type stuff that just isn't in the budget for this year. And I don't think that's going to come back. And I have one other data point that I just saw this week, which was they asked a group. I can't share the group yet. I can't share the data yet. I will share it the minute I'm allowed to share it. I can say it out loud, but I can't tell you who it's from or the data. But it was a really good study, 1,500 execs around the world, C-level execs. And 74% picked as their number one lasting trend of COVID is a reduction in business travel.
I think you're right.
Given that these are the folks who signed the checks, I have a suspicion that's going to turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Now, as soon as somebody, we talk about events and things going on, as soon as somebody breaks that mold and dares to be the first one to have that first big event, I think that others will follow. And I'm going to do a little free press here. Actually, I was on the phone the other day with HSMAI, and I was talking to them about their Rock conference and their marketing conference. They'll be running parallel to High Tech in September. All of that is still on schedule. And as hospitality folks here all on the call, can you imagine being at that first hospitality event?
I can't wait.
I can't wait.
I am so hoping it goes. I will find a way.
By the way, I want to be really clear here. I want to be incredibly clear. I want this as much as anybody. So I hope I don't sound negative from that perspective. I don't know if I said A or one. So two or B.
The Seinfeld thing, A and two.
Yeah, exactly. Two, I think we have to make a distinction. This is where I think the point is going to be. Sorry, actually, before I go to that one. Two, I think there's a very...
1A.
So 1A, 2B. I'm doing a really bang-up job here. No wonder everybody agrees with me on this. Even a 10% reduction in business travel is a big number.
Yes.
Right? It represents about $1 trillion to the GDP in the U.S. in terms of knock-on effects, not just in travel, but in terms of other things. And I think to assume that when it comes back, it will come back to 100% is probably not going to happen. There's going to be some long-term reduction, I think is pretty likely. It might only be 10%, but 10% is a big number. And the third thing, and the reason I think this is true, is for companies that make their money holding conferences and events, they're going to look for a way to do that as quickly as possible, for sure, right? Yeah. There's probably going to be some hybrid stuff and the like, but they need to put people in rooms because between sponsors and attendees, that's how they make their money, right? Right. Where I'm less confident, and actually the on Freitag, he put together this matrix that I thought made a lot of sense. He said internal facing and group is likely small and often hybrid. If you look at something like Cisco Live, which is an enormous, enormous conference for years and years and years, Cisco has basically said they're not doing it again, right? Because it's not their core business. It's a thing that they did to talk to customers, and they are finding through the pandemic other ways to do it that are at least as effective for much less cost. Yes. And so that's the segment of the industry that I'm actually concerned about from a business travel perspective. That is going to be a non-trivial number. Conferences that have to happen because that's how you make your money are going to happen. Conferences that we did as a way to connect with our customers, but we found other ways to do it, those are the ones that I think we may not see again. But again, soon, for some given definition of that.
But to that point, though, Tim, I think there's also a newer appreciation that's coming out of this as well. That whilst that segment of travel will disappear, there may be other ones that pop up. So, for example, we're now a much more distributed workforce. People working from home. It's been proven that the world doesn't stop just because you don't have to go into an office anymore and you can work from home. In many businesses, it's actually a benefit. And a lot of CEOs are seeing that. However, with that benefit comes a drawback. And whilst it may be like, internal facing meetings, like we're calling them internal facing meetings and things like that for business. Yeah, they may disappear. However, mental well-being, mental health and employee wellness and now should become a bigger problem because we're all isolated in our own homes. So you may see the good firms, the good companies out there actually spending money on getting their team together for the sake of their team, not for the sake of an internal meeting. Now, that for me is hugely important and something that I think is grossly underfunded in the business world. And I'd like to see that promote and grow.
I agree with you completely, Trish. I agree with every word of it. Actually, my point in all this, I feel bad because I feel like I'm always the one banging this drum. And my point, I think I'm not making my point clear. I think it is incumbent upon us to recognize that's the kind of business we need to go and find, right? Recognize, I don't know that it will offset. If you're doing Cisco Live and now we're sending Cisco Team A to meet with Cisco Team B, which might happen, I don't know that that's going to be a one-for-one trade-off. That may be a smaller piece of business, right? And B, this time I kept it straight. And B, it is incumbent upon us to go and find that business where we used to rely on this.
Yeah.
there absolutely will be new travel. There absolutely will be other things that we should be looking for and encouraging and helping to grow. So none of this is, it's all doom and gloom and we're all screwed. It is that the world has changed, and expecting that it's going to go back to what it was is going to set you up for failure. Recognize that the world has changed. Recognize that there are going to be new types of travel. Recognize that there are going to be new opportunities, and be looking for your opportunities to actually get your fair share of those, create them where possible, and make your money in a different way. That's my core point.
Right. There are a lot of families where one spouse and the kids go to the beach, and the poor person who has to work stays at home, and maybe one week will go out to them, or try to go out every other weekend or something like that. And in today's scenario, the whole family can go away and stay someplace for a month and really enjoy it slowly. It's just a beautiful way to travel. And you have some days where you're off, and you have other days where you have to do a certain amount of hours, but you can still, take lunch with your family or dinner with your family and do things on the weekend. And I think that long stay is a wonderful and profitable kind of business if you can find a way to get it.
So, strangely enough, the subcontext of because I always put a subcontext to our gatherings each Friday, and this was how we choose to communicate. And ironically, because I thought about it, I channeled my inner Tim Peter, which, other than air guitar, which is the best other alternative I can have, is the concept of communication has changed fundamentally how we dialogue. We have certainly come across appreciation that human interaction is a value proposition we love in our lives, period. That's a baseline. That is, regardless of whether we do it in conferences or whatever, hugs, handshakes, and smiles across the table or in a dinner or whatever are a mandatory part of our healthy, happy existence. We're human now.
Or extroverts.
Yeah. Now, with that said, if you look historically, this is my channeling of the Tim Peterness in me. Before, when there was just newspapers, you had this time progression as to how news was conveyed. And people that controlled those mediums controlled the messages and the information you got. If you owned the Poughkeepsie newspaper, you chose what was actually put in the newspaper. So because of that, you had a message control. Now, as time gone forward, radio supplanted that. There was a means of a channel of communication. TV supplanted that as a means of communication. We saw the internet supplant that. We saw social supplant that. What we've now gone through as a global culture is this change and shift of how we communicate. And conferences, if you look back in timelines, people used to do door-to-door sales. Why? Because they couldn't pay for the newspaper ad. Not everybody got the newspaper anyway, or whatever it was. So they had to knock on doors. We've progressively changed how we sell things, which goes to your point, Tim, of conferences are, in a strange way, a leftover byproduct of previous ways of dialogue. If you didn't go to that conference, you didn't see that potential customer. And it wasn't because of the lack of phones or whatever timeline you want to pick. That was where you went to do business. What we've done from a society's perspective is we've not questioned it, we've changed it. We didn't, like, well, should we do this? It's more like, you can't do this. What other ways do we have to do this? And I think your article, Tim, that you shared out was, companies are learning that there are components that no longer have to be done that way.
Right. They've
learned different ways of doing it. Doesn't mean conferences, to your point, are going to go away. How they are, how big they are, what you do when you're there, that's what's going to be different. And how, I totally think that eventually, technology-wise, we're going to do kind of like Avatar movies were done. Everything's in green screen. You can make everything around you that you want, and you share that online, for God's sake. And going back to full circle VR stuff, as things become more affordable, like we have phones that have screens and TVs on them now, which if you talk 10 years ago, people were like, whoa, the TV on this, that's too little or whatever. As more technology becomes more affordable and more mainstream used, there might be other vehicles of interaction that we will be happy to say is a medium, not totally replaced, but a medium of conversation. So
yeah, I mean, I shared a link a moment ago, something I wrote for Hotel Recovery just before the holidays, I think. And, my point there is, I said, what goes back to normal? Nothing, right? My point there was not that nothing returns. It's that you never go back.
Yeah.
You only go forward, right? We are ending up in a different place. We like saying the new normal or whatever. we're going to end up in a different place than we were in 2019. That's the way the world works, right? We were in a different place in 2019 than we were in 2011. We were in a different place in 2011 than we were in 2001. Some of the change that we are going through right now has been accelerated in a way, somebody called it a generational shift in digital transformation, right? Microsoft said we had seen a decade's worth of digital transformation in 10 months.
Yes.
So,
especially with online e-commerce behavior.
Exactly. But I always use this weird historical analogy. So my grandmother was my grandmother. I know everybody's grandmother is old. My grandmother was a mother at a late age, and my parents were parents at a late age. So my grandmother was old when I was small. Like the first age I ever remember her being was in her late 60s, which in, today you say grandma, when you're a 4-year-old and grandma's in her late 60s, that would be more normal today, but it wasn't common in the 70s, right? And she was a telephone operator, right? For her job when she was young, right? She was one of those ladies who literally plugged the things into the switchboard for Ma Bell, for AT&T, when it was, and for people who are younger than a certain age, this is going to blow your mind because you have no experience with this. I'm not knocking anybody, you just weren't there. But she worked for the phone company. She didn't work for Verizon. She didn't work for AT&T. She didn't work for whatever. She worked for the phone company. Because
we still have that over in the UK, though.
Right. Exactly.
BT, British Telecom.
Right, you got BT. Well, AT&T
I can always picture that she's Lily Tomlin. That's
totally.
Hopefully.
Exactly. All right.
I had a similar conversation. Sorry, Tim.
No, please.
I had a very, very similar conversation with an ex-colleague of mine where we were talking about how things are changing, this, that, and the other, and he obviously made reference to my age, and I said, well, I can remember a time when the internet was dial-up. I can even remember a time growing up where we didn't have mobile phones, and he said, oh yeah, I forgot that you were so old. What? Because he's only ever known mobile phones and the internet. He's grown up not knowing how to entertain yourself without either of those two luxuries.
Can you imagine doing this on a dial-up?
The only thing that I don't want to do, that I really don't want to do on this phone is talk to somebody on the phone. I like to see people when I talk to them, and I don't like to hold anything. And I just love Zoom and all of that. I can't go back.
But this goes precisely to my point. This is exactly my point, right? So my grandmother, who worked for the phone company, who had stock in Ma Bell, whose retirement was paid for by the phone company, and who was born in 1906, just to give a sense of her age at various points, right? She retired from the phone company in 1960 when she was 56 or 54. She hated that no one wrote letters any longer. And that people would call you in the middle of dinner because she couldn't stand the interruption. I'm like, you realize this is where your bread is buttered, right? And the reason I bring this up is because the cultural norms that evolve, right, follow the technology and lag the technology, right? It takes time for the norms that we all accept to reach a certain thing, a certain reality, and we've just lived through an enormous shift in the last 10 months, 11 months, and we're still going to live through it for another handful. And the cultural norms that evolve from this of what is the normal thing are going to take years to play out, right? There are kids right now who haven't been in school in months and months and months, or who have spent a year learning just through the computer and things like that. That's going to shape the way they approach the world for real, forever. Right? There are things we are living through. I love Zoom. I'm with Adele. I love Zoom. I hate having to get on the phone most of the time. There are times I prefer it. But most of the time, we're just going to do video conferencing because it just works better. I did my first ever, since Lauren brought it up earlier, my first ever VR meeting the other night. That's a VR headset back there. Where I was in a space with people I worked with.
Oh, very
right?
cool.
And it sucks. It's horrible. Because there's problems with the tech. The tech's not there yet, right? As an experience, it was 1,000,000 times better than Zoom. And I don't mean a little better. I mean 1,000,000 times better. I got done with the thing, and I wasn't tired. Because when somebody spoke who was over here, I turned my head and talked to them. And when somebody spoke and they were over here, I turned my head and talked to them. Right? So there wasn't this, like, you got to stay focused on a screen for hours at a time.
It was a really big question on this, though, Tim. But
yeah,
did you have to wear pants?
You don't even have a bottom to you.
You don't even have a bottom half.
Okay, that's fine.
Literally fade into nothing.
Also, my seal of approval. I'm not standing up right now.
Also, I found it very disturbing whenever anybody left the room. I found it very disturbing because they dissipated into dust, kind of like they got Thanos. Like, I was like, that's not cool. That's actually very unnerving. But my point being that, you know, things that we have taken for granted as working a certain way are going to be very different post-pandemic. That's my whole point. You know, like, it's going to be very different. We're starting to see what some of those differences are, but it's incumbent upon us as marketers, it's incumbent upon hotel marketers, rev managers, et cetera, to say our business may be coming from different sources as we go forward. And if we're not planning for that, we're setting ourselves up to be in a world of hurt for a longer period.
One may say that there's a new normal. I don't know if one may say that.
That might be a phrase you might hear, yeah.
I'd never heard of that one before. So did you coin that yourself? Yeah.
I did. I just came out with it off the top of my head.
What was the phrase? Say it again. What was the phrase?
New normal.
I think people need to get electrocuted every time they say that.
Yes, they should. Tim, did you use a platform that was open-ended, or was it a proprietary platform? What did you use to do the meeting?
We use something called Spatial.
Spatial, yeah. Spatial.
I've seen that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Spatial. There's 3 other ones that are pretty good too. Depends on what you want to do in the environment, but it is cool because you can pull up a whiteboard, you can pull up a computer screen, you can boost stick-it notes, you can walk up to a wall and write stuff on it. It is interesting.
And some of what sucks about it, and I want to be really clear, I am semi-bullish on VR, I've got some. I think it has very real applications that it's going to be great for, and I think it's got some applications that it's probably going to be useless for, just like every other medium that preceded it and every other medium that will follow it. You know, but I think some of it is undoubtedly user error. I think some of it is undoubtedly, there's a lot of metaphors we take for granted when we deal with computer screens or browser tabs or, you know, how you close a window or things like that we all know how to interact with because the standards have all been set. Right, like we all know how to drive a car because the gas is on the right and the brake is on the left. Except for those of you who live on, except for those of you who are on the wrong part of the world. No, but you get my point. Like we all know how a car works because cars all work the same. We all know how our computers work because computers all work the same. We all know how the web works because the web all works the same. You know, I've used several different VR apps over the last couple of weeks, and they all work kind of different, so you have to learn a different metaphor for each one, which makes the experience just more cumbersome, right? Mm-hmm. In time, when those metaphors get described and we know what they're all like, you know, that'll go away. So, but it was neat. It wasn't just neat. It was useful, and I can see obvious, you know, huge benefits in some ways.
But I think there's going to be, so going to the point where you mentioned about things changing and the conferences and things like that, there's going to come a point as well, but, you know, because the term revenge travel or however it's going to bounce back or whatever it's going to be, there is that social element, as Lauren mentioned there. And, you know, the conferences are like a leftover from a bygone era, like the way of communicating. I still think there's going to be a big element of that because we are social creatures. And also because I've been cooped up in this house for 12 months and I would like to get away from my family just for the night. Just one night. Just honestly. But seriously, my wife and my daughters went out all at the same time for the first time. I realized I think it was Wednesday this week. They went out for the first time and I was left home alone for about 20 minutes for the first time in about 4 months. I'm like, it was just me and the dogs. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot what this was like. Genuinely. So I think when people start getting back together again, I think there'll be a big element of that wanting to go and do conferences. And you all said it yourself, can't wait. You imagine the beer we're going to drink on the first conference. I want to be in the brewery industry.
Oh, yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Tris? Are you an extrovert or an introvert?
It depends on what platform and what media. If I'm in company, then I'm probably a little bit extroverted. But when it comes to social media, I'm very introverted. I don't like posting that often.
I'm going to ask it a different way. Sorry. Do you get energized by interacting with groups of people, or does it wear you out?
Oh, energized, 100% energized. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, same. Anybody else? Anybody get worn out from it?
Depends on the person, but mostly energized.
He says that in the company he's in, and he looked at me when he said it.
I would think most of us who choose to get on a video chat once a week. Right. So Melissa said in the chat, introvert over here. I'm going to put this to Melissa in the chat. Right. Do you look forward to going back to the same number of conferences that you used to go to, or if given the option to not, would you choose not to go to so many as you go forward?
Now we've got to wait for a response. No pressure. No pressure.
You know what I don't miss while we're waiting for Melissa? I don't miss overpriced conferences. Like, I love it.
There was a saturation of it.
But some conferences are so crazy, I don't know how we could possibly get a return from them.
You know, also, Melissa did give us an answer. Hold on.
She said I would still go to as many.
Yeah. I would also say that there's going to be new roles to be played. Two things I will say with a conference. One is that there has been a combination. Caveat, I don't go to
that many. LOL. Right.
So one is that where the definitions of roles have shifted and changed. We know what we used to talk about is the need to get these sales and marketing and people together and revenue management together to now as being a norm, more so in dialogue. So and then as people have been in and out of furloughs and redefined their roles and jobs and what they're placed into, they're going to be approaching these conferences for a different reason or more purpose in mind. So for those who would be doing conferences, the more precise and valuable the content, and to what you just said, Adele, the overpriced to have a conference to do a conference just because I can make it, are not going to go very well. If people are going to take the step to go to a conference, they're really going to go because it's going to be a value proposition to them rather than just I got to be around people, you know.
Well, they're going to have to make that case to the people who signed the checks.
Yeah, that's it's going to be a challenge because there's not the amount of investment going into this side of the business that there used to be, and that'll be. So I think people have to be more deliberate. They'll dip their toe into it. I will say that South Carolina just hosted a governor's tourism conference this past week, and I think there was about 150 in-person attendees, and everyone I've spoken to that attended it is bring on more. This is great. I haven't been to a conference in over a year, and I've got the bug again. So I do.
No, you can't say that. You can't say that.
Bad choice of words, by the way. Yeah. In-person events, right?
We did get the bug. So
safe. 150 people going. We need to put that legally.
But not to toot our horn about this show, but this show has been kind of is the right word panacea? Is that correct, Tim? Panacea. It's been a kind of an interim between being able to sit around and chew the fat on stuff in person than it is to sit and talk to yourself and listen to the little voices that you lose the argument.
Wait, this isn't therapy? I thought that's the purpose of it.
That's really pretty much what it is.
I have to talk to you guys because my dog gets tired of me talking to her. So
your dog won the argument a long time ago, so mine did.
By the way, I also agree. I think it is also true. I mean, we've been focused primarily on business travel. I think it's also true what Tris said and Adele said. I think there's going to be a lot of new types of travel that have not been the norm before that we should be looking forward to. Like, I think we're going to see a big uptick in leisure travel. I think there's going to be a lot of revenge travel. I think there's going to be a lot of potential. We'll see how companies support this, but a lot of potential for longer term stays or the workcation, right? Where Take 2 weeks, work remotely, 4 days during the week, but you're already in place for the long weekend, or things like that, and your family goes with you, right?
You gotta use the official portmanteau, leisure. Yeah.
I know, leisure. I've always hated that word.
Okay, so this is real context. The first conference we're looking to go forward to, and we're like, well, it's been forever since I've been in that city. And your family that has now more flexibility potentially to work remotely or whatever it might be, and or just the need to get out also. And against what Tris says, being alone by himself in the home, bringing the family.
You're not coming with me. No, stop now. You might hear you, Lauren. You might just stop.
Go to that city, but let's do it for, like Adele says, a week. Let's go and take our time. And maybe not stay at the one hotel the whole time because it's close to the conference, but it's not really in the cool place we want to be in. So let's go close for what I have to do. Then let's go someplace else that we want to go that may be more beneficial what we want to do. And you make this whole shifting around. So now multi-unit hotels that might be in that same market might have a great crossover value. Like, hey, stay with us because you're near the airport because that's convenient. Then stay over here by the campus because it's more convenient. But now stay out in the suburbs because it's where it's closer to what you want to do. And create those combinations of experiences and knowledge.
And that's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of stuff we need to be thinking about because I think that's where the opportunities are going to be. I said this earlier. I just want to make sure, I feel like sometimes I'm coming off on the Debbie Downer on this. The point is focus on the potential. Nobody wants to get on a plane faster than I do. I did the math the other day. I don't know if I told anybody this, but I did the math the other day. In the year prior to the pandemic, I literally was on a trip this time ago last year. I was on the road for 3 weeks solid. I didn't get home till March 15th. And I wasn't on the road today. I was on the road a week from now, and I was on the road for 3 weeks straight. But in the year leading up to the pandemic, I flew over 85,000 miles. I visited 21 different cities in 13 different states and 5 different countries. Some of those were places I went to more than once. Some of those were places I'd been to for the first time. You don't travel like that if you don't love it. Like as much as everybody likes to bitch about business travel, you don't travel like that if it actually isn't something you adore. We all love to travel. Think about what we do for a living. Of course, we're the ones going, I'm going to go to a conference in a heartbeat, right? Right? Of course we are. There's going to be some set of people, and it doesn't have to be that big a number who aren't, for it to be meaningful to us from a business perspective. So doing what Lauren just said about figuring out where is those new business opportunities and how do we make the stay more experiential or longer or dip into the second wallet more effectively of how do we increase on-property spend more effectively and the like are the things we need to be looking at because there's a piece of business, and I'm reasonably confident I'm right on this. I'd love to be wrong, but there's a piece of business that I don't think is going to come back, at least at the levels we were accustomed to. And so we have to figure out how do we make more money from the business we're going to get, and how do we find the new business that we never got before and never could have existed before to benefit from, to offset what is probably going away for forever. And I use that term very advisedly. I'm 52 years old. I plan to be laying on a beach in 10 years' time. If it doesn't come back in 10 years, to me, it doesn't matter.
All I know is whatever conference Stuart's going to is my first conference, so give me a big old squeezy hug.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I spent $1,000 just to get the hug. Yeah.
And is there anything specific that you would advise a director of sales that's watching right now where they would find or where to begin to find business that they hadn't thought of?
I've got one for you. It's along the lines that I mentioned before about the wellness. I'm sure a good salesperson is probably already tapped into this, but the events industry itself has got people who specifically put on team-based wellness events for internal teams. Connecting with those type of people, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be out selling this type of product straight away. Connect with them and say, hey, well, you can actually use our facilities to do your wellness event, and at the same time we'll get the people staying over and we can build it into a much bigger event than it just being a one day and done type thing. We can get that additional business that comes in by having the decision maker saying, you know what, let's have the event, but then let's all stay over and we can all do a social event after it.
That's the key. The first night over thing is going to be probably the driver that is most interest to most people. But think too, as a society, we've kind of gone through, and I do not demean people that have suffered through these kind of scenarios. We've all gone through withdrawal. We have to learn how to be around people again without recoiling. We were happy to give a handshake and happy to give a hug where you're like, whoa, you're close.
Don't touch me.
Same thing. It's like, whoa. If I walk up, I mean, it's like I'm going to be like hugging people. Like Holly's going to be like, "Oh, no hugs!" You're going to.
She was like that
before.
She did it before. That's why I used her as an example. It's like Holly was like, "No hugs."
Don't you have the restraining order anyway from Holly, Lauren? I mean, wasn't there a certain number of feet?
People do run from me anyway, and I always thought it was because of the hugs, but I found out there was more reasons than that. But that's just something I learned later.
But I also go back to Lauren's, beacon versus lighthouse, or lantern versus lighthouse. You got to be using social listening. You have to be looking at your search data and understand what are the questions your guests have. What are the things that matter to them? The ones that I'm paying a lot of attention to are family, right? People are going to want to get to be near family that they haven't seen in a long time, which probably means it's more local than it used to be, right? It's your feeder markets are probably going to be somewhat different. But I think there could be a huge opportunity this coming year for Thanksgiving and Christmas in a way that we've never had before, because typically Thanksgiving tends not to be a great weekend for the hospitality industry, right? Because people, when they travel for Thanksgiving, they go stay with family. And I think there could be a lot of opportunity to say, let's get the extended family together. Let's get more people, right? Multi-generational. Alan just said it, right?
Yeah. So I think greater because people have now disrupted tradition, and tradition was one of those things that kept people from straying away and trying to change, right?
Correct.
So now they've had that tradition disrupted. It's a better opportunity now than it's ever been to try something new.
That's exactly right. And I think you've got some great opportunities to look at, and Lauren said this one a moment ago, but some combination of city and outdoor. Like, can you partner with other people to say, hey, we're going to mix city center and something outside the city to, you're not booking a trip to stay in the city center the whole time. You're not booking a trip to stay outside the city the whole time, but you're booking a trip to actually take advantage of both while you're on that one trip. I think there's some huge opportunities.
So not just a traditional family, but other groups of family, whether that's a friend group, whether that's a business's team that lives close to you and you do some kind of event. Businesses right now haven't been together in the same room for a long time. And if you can make that affordable and bring them back together in a way that shows appreciation, I'd be all for that as a business leader.
I stumbled across something the other day. The New York Times had an article that I kept the link on, which was really an amazing map that showed by county who in Facebook talked to what area of the country in Facebook. So as you rolled over it, it showed you the darkened color of where else they communicate with. And I thought it was just a fun little, and I kept the link. But I also did, I did a couple of screen grabs for some presentations to show, this is kind of data you can find and so forth. Just an example. I went back to it just recently. And what I found was the map had changed. They left it running. And the map had changed where before, like for instance, I was looking at Indianapolis, it was very centric to the area around it, so much, and a little bit in Florida, a little bit down in Arizona, which, older family, retired, moved, whatever. Wow, did it light up bigger now? Like there was a lot more communication between that distance of people before compared to what it was before. So to your point, Tim, at bringing this back around, is you can research that to say, what's the likelihood of where they're going to come from to coming to my market because of this connection of I'm going to go see my grandparents, or I'm going to go see my grandkids, or I'm going to go see family. Like I said, tradition has been altered. And there's going to be a lot of, let's get there. And they're going to want to stay because not everybody can stay at grandma's house or vice versa. They're going to need places. And that is what you can begin to talk to people about, how you can provide value for them.
And you got to watch your data. I mean, I think drive is still going to be huge, but but you also need to pay close attention. I'm not telling people things they don't know. Anybody who's been doing hotel marketing for any period of time knows this, but pay real close attention to lift coming into your market. What's going on with the airlines, right? Are they adding flights? Are they cutting flights? Are new airlines coming in, or not new airlines, but new new people opening up flights and things along those lines that they didn't before because the demand is there or they're not. And that's going to tell you a lot in terms of where should you be focusing your energies in terms of feeder markets and figuring out where should we be putting messaging in front of our guests. Right?
Speaking of some Cron stuff, I've been using a term more and more in my research of Flight 2.
Yeah, right.
Strangely enough, I hadn't thought about using it before, and I started using more of it. And it's been really fascinating what people are searching for. And first off, I looked at it aspirationally, Flight to Venice. Okay. Not that they were necessarily booking or could book, but just to see their interest in whether international or domestic. But I'm noticing now, because I left the monitoring on, it's really growing of what people are looking for as they begin to consider the planning stages.
Yeah, a client of mine, and I, for obvious reasons, I'm going to keep this anonymous, but a client of mine has noticed that an airline, I don't want to give away airlines because you'll start to figure out hubs and stuff like that, but an airline has been adding flights from one of their core hubs to one of their secondary hubs. And they're getting a lot. Suddenly, one of their feeder markets has changed dramatically in just the last couple months. And so we're taking advantage of that and picking up a nice piece of business there that if you're not watching the data, if you're not listening, if you're not being there to answer guest questions about that kind of stuff, you're going to miss out on those opportunities.
Well, I told you long ago when it was more focused on New York, when it was at that time, following the 3 airlines and pulling the API data off of Lyft into the market was substantively a data dump that was just, whoa, that's huge. And you learned from it. Huge. Yeah, it was huge. So, yeah, I mean, definitely you can monitor that kind of stuff. But that's the wake-up call of the technology. That's the wake-up call of changing your mode of what you're doing compared. And I'm still coming across management companies as they begin to do things that they're literally dusting off the old book prior to and thinking they're going to just play the game the way they played it before. And you're just like, guys, just throw that thing away. It doesn't even count right now.
Yeah, I think the problem we've got that with some management companies and hotel groups and hotels, individual hotels themselves, is that we've got legacy positions that were held, that were looking at this type of thing, that were probably one of the first ones to go within the organization. The sales, the marketing, the digital marketer, the type of people that were perhaps a little bit further down in their career trajectory, career path, shall I say, early on in their career. Those are the type of people that tended to go, and they were the ones that were going to be the analysts, the ones that are going to be looking at that type of data with any kind of real insight. And so there's a huge talent pool that's missing right now within hotel organizations. We've got that right now with a couple of clients that we're looking at, where we're saying, why have you done this? Why have you set this up this way? And they said, we don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? Well, the person who set it up is no longer working for us anymore. So we just do it like this because that's how it was. Right, gotcha. You're doing it wrong because you need to change it because of this. You weren't doing it wrong back then. You were doing it fine, but now the world has changed. Now and there's a talent issue there, and I think that ties in. You may have already spoken about this, but it ties in with that the article that you sent Lauren about. Oh,
we hadn't talked about, but I was about to say I was going to drop that article into the chat because I think it's relevant as to the value proposition of third party versus internalization. Not being self-fulfilling, but it's a financial, as companies begin to emerge, they're having to make these financial choices. What is the better value option for what we need done? So let me go grab that link real quick. Sorry.
Yeah, whether hiring people internally or getting an agency to.
By the way, while you're pulling that up, Lauren, I'm just going to say I'm not even waiting for the conferences to come back. The minute I feel safe to travel or get a shot in my arm or things like that, I'm just booking a trip to Myrtle Beach so I can go and camp on Stuart's doorstep.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, Tim, as well about the holidays. And this is very localized to me, and I'm sure it has no bearing on everybody else in the rest of the world. But even my wife, for the first time ever, has said perhaps we should spend Christmas away. So we don't do the traditional family Christmas. People over, why don't we go away and let somebody else cook for us? Let's go and travel. And I've been muting this for about 10 years now. The whole Christmas day, it's fantastic. It's lovely. Don't get me wrong. I love my traditional dinner and family and everything else that comes around. But gosh, it's a lot of work, isn't it? Let's be honest. And if we can pay somebody else to do that and we have a lovely time and still be with the same family, why not explore that? Oh, well, we don't do it because it's traditional.
Yep.
we've just
that's the opportunity this has opened up. When there's a disruption in a pattern, then you have an opportunity to create a new pattern at that point.
Yes.
And I do know, I like the focus group of one, but Tris, I agree with you completely. We know we're doing that for sure this coming Christmas. We have always hosted Christmas and Thanksgiving for our nieces, for my extended family, my dad and folks like that. We absolutely will be doing Christmas together this coming year.
Somewhere else.
Right? Yeah. But somewhere else for sure.
So Tris, I'm a little
about the beach. Am I going to cook for you?
Apparently, yeah. you are now.
I love to cook.
So Tris, I'm a little confused. You talk about love of family and love being with him, but why is the crossbar bracket on your door behind you?
Just it's keeping me in.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's keeping me in.
Oh, it's the Rorschach thing.
Yeah. Work more.
To be all fair, he's my co-conspirator. He's a person I worked with extensively with his company Phrasing. He put up the article for that. I know also too, and we kind of passed by it in a little bit of dialogue. Dean, you had an article about some of the results associated with the propensity for travel coming up in the future. I didn't share that article in, but I'll do that now. But I guess goes to an old conversation we had a week or two ago about optimism versus reality. It's constantly, Tim, you keep saying this over and over, and it's so true. You have to plan for the dynamic aspect of what's going on. 1 minute it's good news, next minute it's bad news. Next minute we have some new variation. Next minute we have greater vaccines. Next minute we have lower hospital rates. Next minute we have this. This is constant shifting. Is it going to happen this year? Is it going to happen when this year? Is it going to happen next year? How much of it's going to happen? Where regionally is it going to happen? Stuart, you keep saying this over and over. This isn't going to be all light switch goes on everywhere. It's where's it going to happen, and also whom is it going to happen within that market based on what they're offering. There's so many little gears to the wheel going forward that you have to be planning for all of this stuff.
Yeah, well, it's not a straight line. You might not recover and just continue to recover. You may start to see recovery and then tank, and it's going to be a meandering path forward for everyone.
It's why I always encourage being agile, right? And literally developing the agile muscles. And I mean that in a lot of different ways. Agile means different things to other people. But, it's when I'm so sorry. I'm going to take a weird digression for a second, but I promise this will come back on point in half a second.
You can't make that promise, Tim. We know you can't make that promise.
No, this one I got because I've got some patter around this one. You all probably know this. I was a music major in college, right? That was my major. I thought I was going to be a professional musician at one point in my life. And what I learned to do as a professional musician, was the idea of rehearsal, right? One of the reasons people screw up in business all the time, and it's okay, but one of the reasons you screw up in business is because you're doing things you've never done before. One of the reasons professional musicians, professional whatever, do well is because they've practiced in a very particular way again and again and again. My old teacher used to say, practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. By which he did not mean that you got it right in practice. It meant you practiced a very specific way so that you learned from your mistakes so that you wouldn't create them. Or if you got confronted with something that you hadn't experienced before, you knew what to do and how to recover from it.
Deliberate practice, a lot of
deliberate practice, correct, right. The reason I bring this up is we all like to make predictions on this show. We're all kind of good at it. We are, right? I bet we're wrong 35 to 40% of the time. Mm-hmm. I'm reasonably confident. By the way, if you're right 60% of the time, 65% of the time, when you're trying to predict the future, you're crushing it, right?
As long as you recognize and adjust based on
As long as you recognize and adjust. And this is actually my point why I brought up going to school. What I've tried to learn, what I try to teach my clients, what I've tried to teach my teams over the years and things like that is you don't have to predict the future correctly if you're prepared to adapt when you're wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's the key thing, right? So, when I'm saying I don't think business travel is going to return and be as strong as it was, I could be wrong. We're prepared for that eventuality. We're putting plans in place to say, how do we adapt to that appropriately? How do we adapt to the appropriately if they're right, but not in the way we expect it? It's all around putting in place perfect practice and deliberate practice so that if things change in a way you didn't anticipate, you're prepared to adapt easily, without, suddenly having to run around like a chicken with your head cut off because it didn't go the way you expected it to.
That's two comments. Two comments. One, you're the Ira Glass of our group. You tell a beautiful story and it paints a picture.
I thought you meant that I should only be on radio and shouldn't be.
No. You do a really good job of conjuring up, using story narrative to get a point across. But two, Ed just texted me and he said he's right 100% of the time. He's never wrong. So.
Hey, I have a technical question.
He didn't really text me. That's just a joke.
You learned music, okay? You learned music. When you listen to music, do you appreciate it for its technical precision, knowing how to read music and how to listen to music? Do you appreciate it for its technical value or its emotional value? And the reason why I asked this question is I'm flipping that coin for all of us. Knowing hospitality do we appreciate it for what we experience or for what we know it took to make that experience?
So I the same would be true for hospitality experiences and for music. If I'm appreciating it purely on a technical level, I don't think they did their job.
Okay.
So I'm going to take a Star Wars turn.
It's all emotion. When they do it right, it's all emotion.
Tim and I had a really deep philosophical conversation about the intricacies of the Star Wars universe a few weeks or months ago. And I think it started because I said The Phantom Menace was my second favorite Star Wars movie. And he was like, what the heck are you talking about? And so it got to
proving
a point.
That Stuart also can't predict the past.
I will debate anyone on that. But I said ultimately Return of the Jedi was my favorite. And while I completely acknowledge it may not technically be the best film in the franchise, it's the one I enjoy the most. And that's at the point where even though Tim and I disagreed, he can see my point of view. If it touches you on a level that, isn't maybe technical, but emotional connection, then it did its job.
Well, and we talk about being agile, and I think, and you were talking about Tim's storytelling ability, and I think those two go together actually, because one of the things that I see often happening is people have got reports laying all around them. You can look at data, and we all talk about looking at the data, but we don't talk about what story does the data tell us, right? And so often, especially when a lot of digital agencies that I've worked with, not talk about anyone in particular, but they would come to me with a report and show me, here's the data, here's how we performed last week. And I ask, great, what does that mean? Well, we're up or down or whatever. Well, okay.
Good, red, bad.
Yeah, so, correlation does not equate to causality, first of all, understanding that. But there has to be a story to the data. What does it mean?
Well, let me bring in the marketing component to this because it also applies to marketing to me. I can appreciate watching advertisement for the technical conveyance of the content. They gave me the rate, they gave me who they are, where they are, what they are. Oh, good. But I truly appreciate the emotional impact. And I'm not saying makes me cry, makes me laugh. The emotional impact of drawing me into what you're telling me. Can I convey beyond the technicalities of what I did to do it, the feeling that you wanted me to feel by experiencing what you gave me as content? And I bring this up, Adele, because you do that in the way of guest interaction. I do it from a marketing interaction. Musicians do it from that. But the idea of it is that you can appreciate the technicality of it, but more so the value of the messaging from what you did well.
Well, it's one of those things. If you see somebody who's performing the script well, you're interacting. And Adele, I'm going to turn to you specifically for this. The people who know the script and say the right things and things along those lines, you can certainly respect that they did their job correctly versus the ones who you feel like they're doing it in a more genuine way. They just do it better, right? I mean, you want both, right? But it's about intentionality. It's about, does it come across that they actually care when they're asking me those questions, right? That's the way I think.
The why behind what you're doing.
Understanding the why behind it, right?
Everyone has a checklist, and you can check that list, but you don't understand why.
Just has a scary, scowly look.
I'm sorry, The Phantom Menace. Really?
By the way, Tristan, that's how our phone conversation started. I called him and went, what?
We can chat later. That's an hour-long conversation. You just
that's why I'm always trying to get people to the managers, really speak to the managers and the general managers and director of sales and marketing, that they really need to reach into the hearts of their team and inspire them to connect how they feel about the world in general and what they want to put out there in the world and what they want people thinking about them, and why they came to the hospitality industry in the first place, and get them to put that. There is a kernel of passion for hospitality in everyone that came to the industry, and somehow we crush that passion, and somehow we unintentionally make people feel boxed in, and this is my job, this is what I do, whatever. But if we can just get to that emotional point where they're wanting to give their love to the guests and to take care of them and to feel that they're making magic happen and that they feel like part of a team that makes magic happen, then it's not acting anymore. Then they are putting on a performance, but they are really in character because they're feeling it themselves.
It's authentic.
That's why, similarly, the most talented singer may not be your favorite singer. Your favorite singer may be a rough voice, but whose message speaks to you. And or even a child's voice, but it just hits you in the heart. And that's why the Casablanca can be the #1 hotel on TripAdvisor in all of New York City, with all the most beautiful, because there's just something that speaks to people's heart there. Wow. And I just love everything that everybody's been saying about, taking the performance and adjusting that kind of practice and that kind of daily devotion. And that's exactly what listening, embracing feedback is. That's exactly what so many times when I'm talking about it, people look at me like, wow, that sounds wonderful, but it can't work in my hotel because this is how we do things. This is how we do things. And so it's just impossible to do anything else. But it's not impossible. You can start today.
Lots of things is key of trust. But to coin, just to work off of Tim's thing and his beatnik look, I reach you, man. I reach you.
No, it's funny. I was staying once at a leading hotel in the world when I worked for Leading, which in theory was a gorgeous property. And I'm not knocking them. They were in the midst of a renovation. And, as is the case when you're going through a renovation, things were a little dodgy, right? Not everything was exactly as buttoned up as it should be. And yet, the entire time I was there, every time I interacted with staff, it was one of the best stays I've ever had in my life. So the product was going through some changes and was not up to the standards of what we typically consider.
But back in my restaurant days.
But as soon as you talk to people, you were just like, yeah, this is exactly what it could have been anything at that point. It was fantastic.
Back in my restaurant days, I could make the perfect restaurant. I could make the perfect pictures, the perfect outline, the perfect floor plan, the perfect menu. And I mean perfect meaning everything that was put into it was because everybody said that's what they wanted. But the bar down the street that had the dirt floors and the peanut shells all over the place and the warm beer and the kind of crappy food, and it was packed to the gills because the people, that's where they relate. This was fun. This is, these were the people. It was what was created from that, not what you portrayed. It's what was created from the genuineness of what people's engagement and interaction were. It wasn't the facade that you created. And we've been to all the beautiful hotels, and then we've got the stilted, autonomous, scripted, 520 rule stuff. Hello, welcome. I'm so here to help you. No, you're not.
Right.
What I was saying before, what Adele was absolutely on about there is it's the authenticity, getting the buy-in of people to be able to. So when I'm speaking to you, do you actually believe the words that I'm saying? When thank you, have a great day type thing. Do you actually mean it, or is that just something you say at the end of a phone call?
Right.
Like I know when Stuart tells me that he's my friend, But when you say it, Tris, I totally believe it.
Do you know, Lauren? I think it is. Was it last week? I think it was a year ago. Last week, you and I were in New York together. That's how. That's
it was. That was. Yeah, it was a year ago. Yeah.
By the way, speaking of time, I just recognized what time it is, and unfortunately, I do need to bid a fond adieu.
Well, see, it goes with the whole turtleneck thing. I'm just saying, you got that rocking today, Tim.
I thought you were going to rock out like the jazz.
I would like to point out I am wearing a mock turtleneck. I didn't know that meant I would be mocked for wearing it. It is.
I do. It's a very touching movie. I just saw it last night on I don't know if it was Netflix or what service it was, but it's so moving. Adieu. Watch.
Oh. All right, making a note. I thought you meant I thought you meant the Phantom Menace, and I was
very moving.
Very moving. That's it. Yeah.
Great to see you all. I will not be here next week. As I said, it will be my lovely bride's and my 27th wedding anniversary. So
congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. 27 years with the lovely and talented Tammy Peter is all of the gift that anyone could ever ask for.
We're going to record that and send that to her. We're going to be like, look what Tim's doing.
She'll have to send us a signal if she needs to get out.
Yeah. You know the thing you were saying about authenticity, Tim?
Yeah.
Her parents still aren't sure this is, if I'm the right one, but we'll take it as it comes.
From a VR perspective, you got to join Population 1, so we go shoot and have fun. So just
Population 1 is like a $30 game, man. I'm going to play the thing one time. I'm like,
oh, you know what? You can get a refund on the Oculus if you buy a game and don't like it. You can return it within 7 days.
See, I'm not a gamer. A $30 game for me. $30. Do you know how many sets of strings that is for guitars? Like that's a big commit. You know,
he's going to lose, Lauren. That's what I'm hearing.
See your graphics coming out in you right now.
I am timpeter.com. You can find me at timpeter.com. I'm Tim Peter on most social networks, including Clubhouse, or TC Peter on Twitter. Lovely to see you all. Hope you have a great weekend. Stay well, stay safe. Go get a shot if you can. And I will see you.
Mr. Dean, if you want to know you and where to find you, where can they do that, sir?
Was that me? Sorry.
No, Dean. I was going to give Dean. I was going to give you kind of like, being the.
I'll see you all later.
Hi, Tim. Dean.
So, Schmit with basecampmeta.com and metasearchmarketing.com. I am on Clubhouse, I think, as Basecamp Meta, if I understand how I did that.
That's correct. I followed you yesterday. Yeah. So
I'm a bit of a fledgling on the Basecamp thing, or the Clubhouse thing, but we're getting there. So, but yeah, for educational materials and content, learning about metasearch, what it is, why you need it, how to do it, or if you just need somebody to help you run the campaigns, we have those at metasearchmarketing.com. Check us out.
Yep. Miss Adele, for people to find you at
AdeleGutman.com. It's so easy. And you can see links to my podcast and blog posts and YouTube channel and a link where you can book an appointment with me, and I can give you a complimentary reputation assessment and give you some ideas you may not have seen on how to get more 5-star reviews and get higher up on TripAdvisor and Google and everything else.
And might I say, it's not superficial in the dialogue that you have, because you're always very generous with what you review. It's not like, oh, you can maybe add this picture, and it's very sweet. No, you actually give some very great insight. So it's well worth for people to take advantage of if that's what they're looking to do.
Thank you. And you know what? There's a lot of misleading information out there. People who really think that they're doing the right thing. They read an article somewhere, but it's not written by somebody who, had the #1 hotel in the world on TripAdvisor or anything like that. Straighten them out.
In the back of the hotel, those people? No, not at all.
I can tell them what really works. What really works. Yeah.
Stuart.
The articles are written by people who aren't even in the hotel business.
That's always beneficial. And I guess people that run the Texas power grids and they're not living in Texas, but that's a whole other political thing. Anywho, Stuart Butler, sir, which, by the way, thank you so much for joining us when it graced your presence of scheduling. I appreciate that.
Well, those clients have got to come first, but yeah, you guys come a close second. You can find us at fueltravel.com is the mothership. Learn about our amazing booking engine technology, CRM, and mobile app and digital key. Yeah, and our marketing services. But more importantly, you can find our podcast there where we published 176 episodes of the award-winning Fuel Hotel Marketing Podcast.
Award-winning element there.
Where you can learn tips and tricks and all kinds of stuff about how to market your hotels.
Might I say, just as a lead for the people that really, to make it worth it for them, they get to talk to Melissa. That's where you get to connect with Melissa. Stuart's just a go-between, but Melissa.
I've said it before, Melissa is the brains and the beauty behind the Fuel podcast for sure.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep. That's about it. But and the elusive, the rare Mr. Tris. I mean, first off, how's Ben? We didn't get to ask how Ben's doing.
Yeah, he's good. He's got a lot of daddy duties at the moment with lockdown, and his wife's a teacher, so obviously she's going in. So, but yeah, he's still whinging and complaining. So he's good.
Oh, that's good then. Yeah, that's good.
At the moment he's whinging and complaining, I worry and I panic at that point. Yeah, indeed.
Mr. Tris, for people to find out what you and Ben do, where is it they can find you, sir?
You can get me at Tris at notthephantommenace.com. I mean, no, sorry. You can get me at
Ewok Adventure.
Ewok Adventure. You can get me at tris.heaword@3and6.agency or on LinkedIn under Tristan Heaword, spelled very weirdly and very wonderfully. But if you want us for anything digital marketing related around your hospitality, then we can definitely help you out alongside the other fantastic people who are.
First off, I'm going to trump both of you. Star Wars Christmas special, best ever. Just so you know. Anywho, we are going to see. Yeah, most you know what I'm talking about. Where else can you see other Wookiees? But anyway, all right. So we're actually going to do a scheduled Clubhouse at 2:00, debriefing the show a little bit. Just
today? Really?
Yeah, we're just going to play with it. I'm still waiting for my club invitation to come back for us to have our own club, but at least we'll have a room today that's been scheduled, so we'll see who shows up for that. And we'll do a little deeper today's conversation for about, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever runs with it. But for all the previous shows, you can go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. Look for this one, which is 289, plus all previous 288. Also, we'll be doing the recap on our podcast, which we do each week, which will be a part of that, plus also some cool new tools, which, by the way, I got to bug you, Tris and Stuart. Well, everybody, really. There's a new platform that I got to ask you about, which does simulated phishing tests on your clients to see where their data breach issues are with their staff. Cool. It actually does multiple varieties, not just phishing, but smishing and all the rest of them. And it's a test.
Phishing?
Phishing, smishing, SMSing, smishing.
Well,
I say, dude, you know I am with new words. I make up words just because I like the sound of them. But SMSing, how's that?
Still trying to teach you that it's not meme, it's meme, but you'll get it eventually.
Hey, and it's a jiffy, not a giffy.
Yeah. I was guilty of that the other day.
I'll make it in a jiffy and skiffy. Okay, anyway. But yeah, I got questions about it because I'm going to try to test it out and see what it is. But anyway, we'll talk about some tools and so forth on the podcast in addition to recapping the show. And thank you, everyone. It is therapy, honestly. The chance I get to go over and have intelligent listening to other people that know way more than I do. So look forward to next Friday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern U.S. time. This, of course, will be rebroadcast in Sydney and London time at 11:30 on Wednesdays. And, of course, any questions you have, you can email me at lauren@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. So with that, bye, everybody. Thank you.
Go get a vaccine, everyone. Bye.
Yeah. Have a great weekend, everyone.